Hey guys, welcome to the very first chapter of Algebra 1. Today we are going to start with adding and subtracting integers. The very first problem we're going to start off with is number 1, and it's just 4 plus 6. Hopefully remember 4 plus 6 from our elementary days. 4 plus 6 is just, if I select the right pen, 10. Now we're going to go down to number 2. We have 4 plus a negative 6. Well, let's use the number line here. So let's start at 4. We are adding, but we are adding a negative number. So if we add a negative number, we're going to go to the left. So we're going to count back 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We end up at negative 2. So 4 plus negative 6 must be negative 2. Let's jump up here to number 5 real quick. What if we go 4 minus negative 6? Well, we start at 4. So on a number line, if we go back negative 6, or if we go back 6, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is still negative 2. So plus a minus must be the same thing as a minus. So I'm going to change this into a minus. So one more time, plus a negative is the same thing as one big negative. Next, we have a negative 4 plus a negative 6. Well, we start at negative 4. And now we are adding, but we are adding a negative 6. So instead of going forward, we're going to go backward. So we go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we end up at negative 10. Again, plus a minus turns into a minus. Now let's jump to number 6 here. Let's go to 4. We go to 4. Now we are subtracting, so we're going to move to the left, but we're subtracting a negative 6, so that negative again puts us back to the right. So instead of going to the left 6, we have to go to the right 6. And so we go up 6, and it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now 4 minus a negative 6 turns into a 10. So what does minus a negative turn into? Minus a negative turns into one big plus. Again, minus a negative turns into one big plus. Jumping to number 7. Negative 4 minus a negative. Well, what does minus a negative turn into? Minus a negative turns into a plus. So we go to negative 4 plus 6. So we go up 4, up another 2, and now we are at positive 2. Let's go to number 4. Negative 4 plus 6, so we just go to the right 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so we're at 2 again. And now one more. Negative 4, so we start at negative 4. We are subtracting 6, so we just go to the left 6 because we are subtracting. So that puts us all the way at negative 10. Next slide, multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. So now this is a positive number multiplied or divided by a positive number. It does not matter what number it is, it matters whether it's positive or negative. So it's positive multiplied or divided by another positive number, and that's going to stay positive. Here is a negative divided by or multiplied by a positive number. That's going to be negative. How about a positive multiplied or divided by a negative? That's going to be negative. And how about a negative multiplied or divided by a negative? That is going to be positive. So now let's recap this. Positive multiplied or divided by a positive will stay positive. Now here it changes a little bit. Negative multiplied or divided by a positive is negative, and it does not matter what order it is in because a positive multiplied or divided by a negative is still negative. And finally, when you have a negative multiplied or divided by a negative, it will be positive. Let's take a peek at some examples. So number 9. 9, we have negative 20 times 4. Well, we have a positive negative 20, a negative 20 times 4. We have a negative times a positive, so I know it's going to be negative. And then 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 0 is 0, so it's negative 80. Jumping over to number 11. We have a negative times a negative, so that makes it a positive. And then 15 times 2, if I add up 15 with each other, it's going to be a positive 30, because 15 plus 15 is 30. Next, I have a positive divided by a negative, so positive divided by a negative turns into a negative. 30 divided by 3 is 10. And finally, we have a negative divided by a negative divided by a negative. That turns into a positive. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Now we are going to order the following numbers. Now we have to be careful here. The first thing we have to do is to make sure that our fractions and our decimals are all in the same number, or all in the same fraction, or all decimals. We have to make them fractions or decimals. We can't have both. So since we have 3 fractions and 1 decimal, it would be nice to make this a fraction. And so I'm going to change it into a fraction right now. This is 4 9/10. Well, we know that it's 4 9/10. When there is just 1 decimal place, we are just going to put that number over the number 10. And 4 9/10 cannot be simplified. So now we can go ahead and order these. I know the negatives will always come first. So we have -5 and 3/5. Then we have 4.9, or 4 9/10. And now, do we know which number is greater? No. So, instead of finding a common denominator right now, I'm just going to change these fractions into decimals. So what do you have to do? How do we change them in to a decimal? We have to divide the top, so I'm taking 2 and dividing it by the bottom. So 2 divided by 9 is 0.222. Well, 5 2/9 turns into 5.222. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to grab a different color real quick, draw an arrow to show you where I'm working. So we go top, which is a 3, divided by 8, and so 3 divided by 8 turns into 0.375. So I throw the 5 in front, so it's 5.375. So I look at it, which one's greater, 5.222 or 5.375, and I realize that it's that one. So it's 5.222, and then finally 5.375. Now, if you wanted to and change them to decimals immediately, feel free. It might have been easier to change them to decimals, or you might have liked changing the 1 decimal to a fraction and see where that gave you. Couple more. Now we are going to add and subtract fractions. Please remember, when we add and subtract fractions, we have to find the same common denominator. So the denominator is the bottom number of the fractions. So what's a common number between 2 and 6? Well, the first one that pops to my mind is 6. So the denominator now is going to be 6. Oops, I'm going to put a plus sign right in the middle. Now, how did I get this 2 to be 6? I had to take that times 3 to become 6. So what you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So I'd take 3 times 1, and that's going to give me 3. Well, the bottom here is already 6. So I'm not going to do anything with that except leave it 6. We have the common denominator. Now you add them straight across. So it's going to be 4 6. Now you can simplify 4 6. What can you take out of the top and the bottom? You can take out a 2. So now you're left with 2/3. All right, let's go to 14. Do we have the same common denominator? Do we have the same bottom number? No. Well, now we have to think, what's a common number between a 2 and a 3? The first one that pops to my mind is a 6. Could you use other numbers besides a 6? Absolutely. You could use 6, 12, 18. Any of those numbers would have been perfect. Well, how did you get this 2 to become a 6? You had to take it times 3. So what you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So you take the top times 3. How'd you get, which 3 times 1 is 3. Now, how'd you get this 3 to become a 6? You had to take it times 2. So now you have to take the top times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. The same common denominators. You add now across to get 7 6. And we have a improper fraction here, so we have one full one. And then how much would be left? We would have 1 over 6. A couple more. Hang in there. Now we have a 8 and a 3. What would be a common denominator between an 8 and a 3? Well, let's see. 8, 16. Does 3 go into 16? I don't think it does. Well, how about 24? 24 divided by 3 is 8, so awesome. It works. So our common denominator is 24. As I throw a fraction bar over the top. Now, how did I get that 8 to be 24? I had to take that times 3. So what do I do to the bottom? I have to do to the top. 3 times 3 is 9. Now, how did I get this 3 to become a 24? I had to take that times 8. And so what do I do to the bottom? I have to do the top. So 1 times 8 is 8. That's the sloppy 8, but 9 minus 8 is 1. We have a common denominator, so I'm going to leave it as 24. And the last one, I have a 5 and a 4. What's the common denominator? The common denominator is 20. So I change both denominators to 20. How did I get that 5 to 20? I had to take that times 4. What do you do to the bottom? You have to do to the top. 4 times 2 is 8. What did you do to the 4 to become 20? I took it times 5. So the same thing to the top. That's 15. Now we have to be careful here because it's 8 minus 15. Well, I know that 15 minus 8 is 7. But we are taking away 15 from 8. So is this going to be a positive or negative 7? Since the 15 is bigger than the 8, I know that it's going to be negative. And still negative 7/20. Finding the reciprocal. How do you find the reciprocal? You basically just flip it. So what's on the bottom goes to the top. What's on the top goes to the bottom. So on the bottom here is a 6. So bottom goes top. Top goes to bottom. 6 over 1. Well, all real numbers are all over 1. So now that 1 goes to the top, so it's 1, and then the top goes to the bottom, 6. Well, what if they're a mixed fraction like this? Well, now you have to make them in proper fractions. How do you make them in proper fractions? You have to circle multiply, and then add. 2 times 10 is, 2 times 5 is 10. And then you have to add the 3, so you get 13/5 for your fraction. Top becomes the bottom. So it's 13 over 5. 5 over 13 for your final answer. And then here, the reciprocal of 4/5 becomes 5/4. And one more page. We have a $20 t-shirt with 20% off. How do we figure that out? Well, what do we have to do? We have to figure out what 20% of $20 is. How do we do that? I'm going to take 20 times, and then the decimal of 20%, and that is just 0.2. And 20 times 0.2 using our handy dandy calculator is 4. Now, 20% of 20 is 4, but it's 20% off, so I'm going to take 20 minus 4 because it's off, and that gives me 16. So our final answer is 16. Next, the $20 t-shirt with 6% tax. What do we have to do here? Well, we have to take 20 times, now it's 0.06 for 6%. 6% turns into 0.06 as a decimal. Using our handy dandy calculator, we know that 6% of 20 is 1.2. Now it's a tax, so what do you do with the tax? You add it, so it's 20 plus 1.2, which turns out to be $21.20. Now this last problem in your group, I want you to discuss, to think what you have to do with this $20, 20%, but 6% sales tax at the very end. Thank you and good luck.